my growing up years, the coal mine was still going strong. As when I left in 1960 to go off to Virginia Tech, then about then it started to go downhill. About the year before, the company decided to sell the houses. That kind of broke the bonds between the people who lived there and the company at that point, when they all had to either buy their houses or go somewhere else and then try to commute in to work. So that started the kind of a downhill slide. And then
welcome to Creepalachia. It's a monumental day in the studio today. A legend is here. The official one of the Rocket Boys, Homer Hickam himself. Sir, thank you for taking the time to be here.
Well, thanks for having me, JD.
Yeah.
This is great.
I appreciate it. So, people listening obviously know who you are, but we're going to talk about McDowell County. We're going to talk a little ghost stories, maybe some coal mining, and definitely some rocket science, which I'm way underqualified for. But I'm pretty pumped. So how are you?
I am very good. Thank you very much. I don't know if you're aware of it and your audience is, but last year I had colon cancer. I went through chemotherapy and I'm now in remission. So I'm a happy boy.
Wow. Just a fighter, sir. Well, that's all. How long when did you find out? How long did that take to go into remission?
First off, colon cancer is kind of epidemic among males in West Virginia. I like to say it's because we're all related, right? But,
right. Yeah.
But for some reason, it is. So this is a good reminder for all of you folks listening out there to get your colonoscopy after you're over 40, because for some reason we tend to get this awful disease. I found out about it during the about this time last fall, actually, and so a little bit of me had to come out, and then I had to go through that round of chemo, which was no fun. But as I said, I'm in remission now. But it did lead me to volunteer at the Clearview Cancer Institute there in Huntsville, Alabama. It's been really, really good for me. It's the only thing that's going to get me in heaven. I can always tell St. Peter, but I volunteered for the CCI. And so I every Friday afternoon, I go over there, and it's where they infuse people with the chemo and so on. And just if they want to talk, I'll talk. I'll give them a warm blanket. I'll give them a pillow, something to drink, something to eat, whatever they want. And it really has opened my eyes to some of the suffering that's going on because of cancers, but also how brave and courageous people are to get themselves through it.
Oh yeah, I've had I had a radiologist or radiation therapy doctor come in, and he told me all about different cancers that were rampant in West Virginia. But just to hear that you beat it is very comforting. I'm glad you're here, sir.
Well, we live on, once you have this kind of thing, you live in 6 month increments. You have an MRI every 6 months, but so far so good. I've gained all my weight back. I'm feeling good. So it's great to be back in West Virginia talking to you.
Shoot, yeah. And you just had where was you at? You was at what college was you at?
I was at UVA in Wise. Down in Virginia, Wise County, down in Virginia, beautiful. I'd never been to Wise before. Absolutely a beautiful campus. It was great. It's actually not that far from McDowell County, but there's like a range of mountains between us.
Right.
So as the crow flies, it's not that far, but on the road, you've got to drive all the way from there, back up through Bluefield, and then back down through Welch and all that. Take a while to get there. But again, it was just a beautiful place.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk some McDowell. Is it McDowell or McDowell? Which one are you?
McDowell.
Okay, there we go.
That's the way I pronounce it.
There we go. Okay, which I'm from McDowell, and grew up there, so this is extra fun for me. So, and as a quick overview, obviously you grew up in Colwood, correct? Or where exactly did you grow up in that area?
I grew up in Colwood, West Virginia, which was a pure company town. The company owned every house, every street, every fence. It owned, of course, the company store. All the men that lived in Colwood worked in the mine. All the women were either married to a coal miner or a school teacher. the coal company was a pretty benevolent organization, a kind of benevolent dictatorship, if you will.
Oh yeah.
And they actually hired teachers to come in to the school there, and would give them a house if they would come in. So we had really good education system. They knew that the teacher after a while would marry a coal miner. They'd all move into the same house. It would all work out.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, even the company owned even the church, and it was kind of funny. For some reason, they had the preacher on a 2-year contract. So every 2 year we got what we used to call a low bid religion, whatever it was. So I grew up being Methodist for a couple of years, which is pretty laid back religion. And then overnight we'd become Southern Baptist, which is kind of tough. We'd tough it out for a couple of years, and then the Methodists would come back. So
I've had both. My in-laws are Methodist, and then my grandpa was old regular Baptist. So yeah, had both. So what was the population then in Colwood?
It ran about 2,000 up to 2,200 maybe. So it was quite an industrious town. Of course, everything was centered around the coal mine. But my growing up years, the coal mine was still going strong. As when I left in 1960 to go off to Virginia Tech, then it started to go downhill. About the year before, the company decided to sell the houses. That kind of broke the bonds between the people who lived there and the company at that point, when they all had to either buy their houses or go somewhere else and then try to commute in to work. So that started the kind of a downhill slide, and then Youngstown Sheet and Tube owned it, and then they sold out to another company who sold out to another company. The usual thing. And pretty soon they just sell everything, just close it down. They can make more money by selling the mine equipment for scrap or whatever. So it went completely down in the 80s.
Sure. Was it a union permit that whole time?
Yeah, it was union, which was interesting. So George C. Carter, out of Carroll County, Virginia, came in the early 1900s and found Colwood and Coretta. And so he started everything there, and he was a real powerful man. Again, he kind of set the stage to make Colwood and Coretta and kind of very good places to live. And I realized some coal camps were not so good, but for some reason that was in his mind to make Colwood kind of a model company town, which he did, but he kept the union out all of his years, year after year after year after year. And of course, John L. Lewis didn't like that. He was a United Mine Workers guy, and they kept trying to organize. But Mr. Carter kept not wanting to do it. Finally, Harry Truman, who Carter knew, President Truman sent, after it was 1947, sent the United States Navy in to occupy Colwood. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I was 4 years old when that happened. So the Navy came in, occupied Colwood. Carter said, I'm still not going to bring the Union in. I'll sell out. They sold to Youngstown Sheet and Tube, and then the Union came in.
Wow.
But my dad ended up being the general superintendent there, and that meant that he was not a Union guy. He started out as a basic miner, but Mr. Carter raised him up, and Captain Laird, who was general superintendent there before, and but Dad got along with the Union just fine, even though he knew the Union chief. The Union chief had actually dated my mom in high school, and they'd gone through high school together, Gary High School.
Right.
So they all knew each other, and they got along.
Oh, roll the barrel.
That barrel between Welch and Gary. I think that's what that was.
Yeah. How cool. And you were a Big Creek owl?
I was a Big Creek owl. Yeah. 10th through 12th grade is the way that worked over there. Big Creek District. It was a consolidated school. So Colwood, Coretta, Bartley, Aminata, War, all those little towns. After the 9th grade, then we got to meet the kids from all those other little coal camps we didn't know until then. It's kind of interesting to all come together like that.
Yeah, I love driving through that area. I tell everyone the prettiest drive in McDowell County is when you're going from Colwood to War. I just love it so much, especially in the fall.
Yeah. Well, that was, of course, the school bus. The bus driver's name was Jack Martin. And Jack had his little hat that he wore, and he didn't take any guff off anybody. You better not. Basically, just be quiet. We sat 3 to a seat, I remember. There were so many students back then. And Jack Martin took that bus over that road, rain, snow, it didn't matter. We got across, except for maybe twice the entire time I was in high school. We didn't go across. And one time we did. Odell Carroll was one of the Rocket Boys, came and hit my the window with a snowball and said, "Come on, Sonny, we're going over to Big Creek," and that's 8 miles away over 2 really steep mountains, as you know.
Yep.
And we did. We went over there with our sleds. And I like to froze to death coming back. I wrote about that in Rocket Boy.
That's awesome. Yeah, my brother wrecked on that mountain when he was in high school.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, well, he was racing. He shouldn't have been.
Yeah, and we used to race too. There is a long straight stretch right before you get into Coretta, which we used to, long for us was like 3/4 of a mile. That was a real straight stretch. And we called that Little Daytona. We like to scare our dates on that. Boy, we just get as fast as we can get. At the end of it, it's a 90-degree turn. You better be ready for it.
That's great. Yeah. And I know exactly what you're talking about, a 3/4 mile straight stretch. Like, that is huge.
That's huge.
In that area.
In that area, absolutely.
That's great. So your dad was a superintendent. Do you remember how many strikes happened while you were going through school? Do you remember any specifically?
No, they were settled all pretty quickly. There was actually one strike, and again, I wrote about that in Rocket Boys, and where I needed the machinist to do some work for me while I was up at the National Science Fair. It was a true story, and they were having one of the very rare strikes there, and so my dad had to give in to allow the miners to go back to work so the machinist could do the work and they could get me what I needed up at Indianapolis.
So that was true.
That's
in
the
the
story
in the movie.
Yeah,
and I was going to ask you about that too. So that's the book they optioned to make the movie, and then they changed the name to October Sky, correct?
Right. It's an anagram. If you take the letters in Rocket Boys and move them around, it spells out October
Hold
Sky.
on,
It's
what?
It's true. Yeah.
I never realized that.
It's one of those things that was meant to be, right? So what happened was when they had the test audiences for the movie, the theater audiences didn't like the title for whatever reason. They thought when they went in to see it, because you don't tell the test audience what you're about to see. When they went in to see it, they heard it was called Rocket Boys. They assumed it was something about NASA or professional rocketry or something like that,
Sure.
and they didn't expect a story about these kids growing up in this coal camp who just happened to build rockets. And so they didn't like the title. They had to change the title. So Joe Johnson, the director, is the one that came up with it. I was trying to think of a name. They were going to call it Homer's something about Homer. And I was called Sonny growing up. My dad was Homer. But for the movie, they thought Homer sounded more West Virginian, I guess, and they gave my dad a different name, John, which I didn't like, but they did.
Oh, I didn't realize that either.
Yeah,
oh.
No, he's Homer Hickam. I'm Junior, Homer Hickam.
Okay,
Jr.
yeah.
I'm the second son, by the way. So what happened there was they had a perfect son, Jim, my brother Jim, perfect in every way, handsome, good student, great football player, got all the girls, perfect. And well, they didn't know that, but they kind of suspected he was going to be perfect. So they had me, and they wanted a girl really bad. They really wanted a girl, and they expected a girl. And the way they used to tell whether you're going to have a boy or girl was the way that the woman carried herself and where this,
Sure.
the stomach, whether it was high or low, I don't know which was which. But anyway, everybody predicted that it was going to be a girl. So they had already picked out a name. I was going to be Susie, was going to be my name. I don't know why, but that was it. And
good name.
Yeah. So I was born, Susie was born one night, February 19th, 1943, in the middle of a snowstorm with something extra that they didn't expect. And so they didn't have a name. And when my dad, he worked all the time. So it took him a while to come over and see me at the hospital. And he walked in, took one look at me, and my mom was holding me. And he said, "Elsie, that's got to be the ugliest baby I've ever seen." And turned around and walked out. And the next person in was a nurse with a clipboard. She said, well, Mrs. Hickam, have you decided what you're going to name your little baby boy? And she said, why, yes, I'm naming this one after his father. So that's how I got my name.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Did they have to repaint the nursery or anything? Or
there was no nursery. I don't know
No?
where I was. I guess I was in the same room with my brother. Yeah, I would know I was because we had bunk beds when I grew up. But later on, we moved into the bigger house where the general superintendent is. So.
That's incredible. So how did coal mining culture kind of shape your worldview early on? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's all I knew growing up. Long lines, 3 times a day, 3 shifts. The long lines of men going to work, hearing their lunch buckets clunking as they went, and some going and some coming back and forth. The hoot owl shift. We lived in what was called a substation row. There was a substation there for the electrical power for the mine. So that constant hum was there. Now I've got tinnitus, so it's back.
Oh, yeah.
I've got the hum. As you get older, that happens. Sure. Hearing the machinist banging on whatever they were working on up there, and the hiss of the arc welder and all that. Colwood had played an industrial song, and we also had the train go through Colwood, and coal dust everywhere constantly. All the women having to work constantly to keep the coal dust out of the house. And when you'd wake up in the morning, and if you threw your blanket off too fast, you'd see a cloud of coal dust go up.
Really?
And so they finally took the track out in the late 1950s, which Colwood was able to clean up. Mm-hmm. and moved the operations over to Coretta, their sister town over the mountain there. But yeah, it was a dusty place. But everybody, they worked real hard to keep their houses clean, and the company would give them paint to paint your house, and everything was required to be the same color, of course, a bright white, except for the Appalachian. People worked for Appalachian Power up on the hill. They were allowed to put a green a tint for some reason in their paint to make it a little bit different.
That's interesting. They picked white.
Yeah.
I mean, that had to dust up pretty quick.
Of course. Yeah. But they were out there scrubbing all the time to keep everything clean. It was that they didn't own the houses. The company owned the houses, but everybody had the pride that they wanted to keep everything clean, and they planted, took care of the yard and planted little gardens and everything. So it was kind of a sweet place really to grow up.
Sure. Now this was post coal script era, but did they have like a company store?
Oh yeah, we had script.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we still had script in the company store. Sometimes in some coal camps, the company stores would be a little harsh. The way that worked was if you got behind, the wife would go to the company store to buy the groceries, and they had what was called a book, and you would sign the book. And if you exceeded on the book your pay, whatever it was, and you got paid by the hour, then they, in order to keep you to have something, you would borrow $50 a script. And then, but that could only be spent in the company store is the way that worked. Mm-hmm. So you can see how you would get behind. If you kept on going, pretty soon you'd be in debt. As the song goes, I owe my soul to the company store. But they were very benevolent there in Colwood. If they saw somebody was getting behind like that, they would allow them to work extra hours or do something to work it off. So.
Right. Do you have any of those old pieces of script from there?
I got a bunch of it. People keep giving it to me.
I'd say you get a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I'm glad it doesn't exist anymore, because people were really kind of stuck, which I kind of want to walk through. What was it instilled in you? Because I've been looking forward to this, because I was a surface coal miner for 9 years, and I transitioned out of that. Now, granted, I dropped out of college, and I wasn't, I didn't have the type of mind that could do that kind of route, but I figured it out, thankfully. But I'm so interested in how you felt as a kid. Did you always feel like you were destined to be a coal miner, or did you know early on, like, I think I'm going to kind of do something else?
I knew early on that my mom would have killed me if I'd decided to be a coal miner.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. My mom, when she graduated from Gary High School, headed down to Orlando. where she lived with her uncle Aubrey. And she just fell in love with any place other than McDowell County, West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
She actually fell in love with a young man down there. You probably know his name. His name is Buddy Ebsen.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Uncle Jed on Beverly Hillbillies.
Wow.
So my mom, Elsie Lavender, and Buddy Ebsen sparked. And my mom thought that they were going to get married. And so Buddy ended up going to Hollywood, actually to New York first with his sister, and kind of ghosted my mom.
Oh.
And so she went back to West Virginia. My dad had been asking her to marry him forever. And so she finally agreed to it. I always said that it was a decision that she regretted for the rest of her life, but would not have changed, if you get that meaning. Okay?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But she didn't like Coalwood. She liked it. Well, I mean, she was fairly popular, and when she became a superintendent's wife, she understood she had responsibilities and so on. But she always wanted to get away and tried to convince my dad. Black lung was clearly killing my dad. Even in the 50s, we could see that he was having a problem with black lung. So my mom instilled in both my brother and I early on that we needed to get out of Coalwood one way or the other and not be coal miners. And what we were seeing actually up and down the rows there, most of the people understood that coal mining was not, their parents had been coal miners, and maybe even back another generation. So I look back on my dad, my parent, and my granddaddy and my great granddaddy were all coal miners. So you would think that, okay, well, we're just going to continue this. People in Coalwood have figured out by then that probably there was at best 20 or 30 years left of coal there.
Really? They knew that long ago?
They could figure it out. I mean, you go to the coal mine, you go up to my dad's office, and there was it all sectioned off, them pillars, and you could see there was an end there. After a certain point, you're going to run out of it. So they started putting in our heads early on that we needed to be thinking about doing something else. And of course, the magic bullet back then was go to college. Mm-hmm. That was the best way. Do something, whatever it took, get to college. So that's what happened.
That's interesting. So that's different than the movie too.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
so your dad was like, "You're not doing this." I mean, because that was kind of the main conflict in the movie.
What, and to a certain extent, it is in the book too. What my dad saw in me when I started building the rockets was, in the first place, my dad hardly knew I existed. I was my mom's favorite child, but my dad so totally, utterly doted on my brother. Right. All his hopes were with my brother. And my brother was, like I said, a great football star, a great athlete and student and everything. And so that's who my dad paid. He didn't pay any attention to me at all. And then when I started building rockets and got interested in that, he realized, hey, this kid maybe has something going for him. And this very much unlike the movie. He knew that I was not going to be a coal miner, but he was interested in me becoming a mining engineer. Right. He wanted me to be a mining engineer. He didn't see that rockets and all that stuff, space, that was stupid. That's silly. That doesn't make any sense. But a mining engineer would be a great profession for this boy. I think he could do it. So that's different from what they showed in the movie.
Yeah. And mining engineers make there's a lot fewer of them now, but they make a good living
with that. I mean, they're a great program at Virginia Tech, and they do up at WVU as well. And there's lots of different types of mining, just as you said, surface mining, metallurgical mining. There's mining all over the world, and Turkey and Australia and everywhere else. There's always, if you're a mining engineer, there's always somebody's going to hire you. No question about that. And of course, these our parents and everybody up and down the rows there in Coalwood all came out of the Depression and World War II. So they had kind of a different perspective about a lot of things. It's like, just get yourself a job that actually allows you to buy groceries and have a roof over your head. That's what they were interested in.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And talking about, so I have family that actually designed prep plants, and they went to Mongolia for a few years. I mean, like you said, I mean, there are positions out there for that kind of position, but you decided to take a different route. And I'm curious, so was there really a Miss Riley?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so how big of an influence was she actually in your life?
Absolutely huge. So Miss Riley, in terms of telling the story, so Miss Riley was the one that felt like that Big Creek High School was known as a football school. It was all athletics. You go in, you walk in through the front door, there was a trophy case from one end of the hall to the other, just filled with trophies that Big Creek had won. And when Sputnik happened, there was all of a sudden this emphasis everywhere on what we call STEM now, right? Science and engineering. And when Miss Riley came in, she had gone to Concord, and she was a valedictorian there, and had decided to come back and teach at Big Creek, where she was also the valedictorian. And she felt, looking at that trophy case all the years that she was around it, it's like there's nothing in here for kids that are not athletes. And she got wind fairly soon that these boys over in Coalwood were blowing things up and were kind of interested in doing that kind of thing. And she thought maybe they could go. The science fairs were starting to get really, really big because of Sputnik and that whole era. That maybe these boys could, if she got us oriented in that direction, go to the county science fair, maybe win a ribbon, third place or something, that she could convince Mr. Turner, the principal, to let her put that in the trophy case. So it would be something else besides sports trophies in there. So that was her idea. And then when she came to me with it, again, things happened over a 3-year period, not like the few months like they showed in the movie. So
Sure.
when she came to me, I was against it. I was, we don't know. We're having fun with this. And Quentin, the prototypical nerd of all time that we got into the Big Creek Missile Agency there, he knows a little bit about how rockets work, but we don't really know. And so if I have to go up in front of some judge, I don't want to embarrass Coalwood and my parents to go up in front of some judge and he asked me how the rocket works and how come it went this high and not this high. I wouldn't be able to answer that, Miss Riley. I don't want to be in a science fair. So the next year after that, that's when she got us that book, Principles of Guided Missile Design, which revolutionized everything in our thinking. We realized, hey, this is a lot more complicated than we thought. We've got to learn advanced mathematics. There was no calculus classes. We've got to learn calculus in order to figure this all out. If we're going to be in this science fair, we didn't expect to go national, but and so when she got us that book, then she got us calculus classes after hours, and we learned how to design these sophisticated rocket nozzles. And then the machine shop there at Coalwood, the men would much rather help us build our rockets than work on my dad's mining machine.
Right.
So they would come in after hours, and we'd give them the design, and there was no way we could possibly. These are very intricate, required a lot of intricate machine work in order to build. And so they would come in after hours and build these things for us, and then start telling us how they thought it should be built, and so on and so forth. And that was a lot of fun to get to know them. And my dad, of course, he knew all that, but he pretended he didn't know.
That's incredible. And I'm kind of bouncing around. So I guess the first instance, like you blew your fence up, right? Like what was the first instance that you had an idea of like, well, let's put some powder in this tube and then see what happens? I had
no idea. So the only way, again, it was because of Sputnik that I thought we used to go around the kitchen table and say what we were going to do. My mom would require us to do that. And so I somehow got it in my head that I wanted to build a rocket because of Sputnik and Werner von Braun, and we saw him on TV and everything. And I thought, okay, that looks like fun. I want to build a rocket. The only thing I knew about a rocket was there was a picture in Life magazine. I knew the pointy end probably went up, and there was like fire coming out of the other end. There was some sort of tube in between. So I just figured cherry bomb powder would do great for that. And I had a lot of them left over from the 4th of July, so I packed this flashlight, which looks sort of like a rocket, and full of black powder, and glued some fins on it, and set it on for no apparent reason. So my mom had rose gardens. She loved roses. And she had the company carpenter come down from the mine and build her a fence. It was a rather low fence. It wasn't like the picket fence that you saw in the movie. It was like 4x4s with mine wire around them.
Okay, yeah.
So I set it up on the top of one of those 4x4s, and but it was packed full of cherry bomb powder, and you can imagine when that went off. I mean, it set the post on fire in the first place. It also just blew some of her rose bushes into a million pieces. And so again, it's unlike the movie where Natalie Kennedy comes out and says, "Well, don't blow. Didn't I tell you not to blow yourself up?"
Right.
It was different. We actually that happened at night, and it was like back then. You kind of expect the Russians to attack any time. It's right in the middle of the Cold War, right? So most people in Coldwood thought, okay, the Russians finally decided to attack, and they started at Coldwood. So everybody came out on their back porches. The lights came on. The dogs started barking. All up and down the hall. My mom and dad walked out, took one look. There I was standing all by myself with that post on fire, and her rose bushes blown up, and the other boys had disappeared. Of course, they had run away. And my dad took one look and said, "I'll see you handle it," and walked back inside. So that's when she actually challenged me. She came out and she said, that's when she gave me a lecture. I mean, she'd have killed me. Honestly, JD, if my mom had killed me at that moment, I don't think there had been a McDowell County jury that would have convicted her. They would have said, "Yeah, Mrs. Hickam, sometimes, they deserve it. We're letting you off." But instead, she came out and she said, she gave me a lecture about the town is dying. And apparently I showed her something, some sort of initiative. And she said, maybe if you learn how to build a rocket, you can impress your dad. I have enough money to send you through college. I've been saving up. Your brother's going to get a football scholarship. I have enough. I can do it. But your dad has to approve because we have a joint checking account. They wouldn't allow a single woman to have their own checking account back then.
Really?
And so we got to convince your dad that you're good enough to go to college, because otherwise he's going to just get you a little job at the mine. As a matter of fact, they've already picked you a little job. They don't think you're smart enough to go underground. So I heard him talking to the union chief the other day, and there's this guy, the guy that's in the little house by the railroad tracks. He counts cars, empty cars and full cars. That's all he does all day. And they think you could handle that job. So true story. And so she says, "Let's convince your dad that you're good enough. Why don't you learn how to build a rocket?" So that was a challenge that she gave me that night. And that just started the whole thing.
That's incredible. But it started in the most holler, like that's what we do in hollers. We do crazy stuff like that. We do crazy stuff.
Kids, boys, you do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That's
you
right.
took that idea and went to the max.
Yes, as it turned out. But again, it's like Miss Riley had to have this idea of having something in the trophy case, and being willing and seeing something in us boys that were a little bit different. Okay. And also being willing with her own money to buy this rather expensive book. It was hard to find. I later saw that book in a PhD program for rocket science the next time I saw that book. Yeah. And we learned a big part of that book. We learned.
That's pretty incredible. So, I mean, we have YouTube now, and I couldn't learn it. I couldn't sit down and focus enough to learn it. So
I probably couldn't either. And well, thank goodness for YouTube. Every time I need to fix something, I first go out to YouTube.
I know, right? Yeah, they'll video it, show you exactly what to do.
Isn't it amazing? It really is.
That's literally how I built my business.
Really?
Thank goodness. But so you all went along and you started going through these science fairs, and you ended up at the National Science Fair. Yeah, did you ever feel out of place?
I absolutely, totally, utterly felt out of place. First place, there were no mountains. It was in Indianapolis. I'd never been anywhere except very briefly down to Myrtle Beach. And then you had the whole ocean to look at. But it was so weird being in a place where everything was flat like that, and a little bit intimidated by the other kids down from New York or from LA and around who had some pretty amazing exhibitions to show. My medal was in a particular they didn't have an overall winner like they showed in the movie.
Sure, yeah.
It was by whatever science or technology you were representing. So I won the gold medal in propulsion was what that was. So I did have the most sophisticated rockets there. There was a number of rocket exhibits, but mine was head and shoulders over everybody else's.
That's still pretty daggone good, though. I mean, regardless if they split it up or not, it was an epic moment in the movie. But...
Oh, it was. And it was an epic moment then, too. I was really proud to be able to bring that back to Miss Riley primarily. I gave her that medal, but she gave it right back to me, said, it's yours. And I kept that medal and I'd forgotten about those medals, and I'd forgotten about everything. You got to realize all the things that happened afterwards, going to Virginia Tech and going to Vietnam, and then becoming a scuba instructor and doing all the diving and then writing. I wrote the first book about the U-boat wars off the East Coast called Torpedo Junction, and working for NASA. I'd forgotten about all that.
Sure.
And it came back because, two reasons is the way that that story came back to me. Let me tell you about the Science Fair medal first. The Science Fair medal and the rocket nozzle, one rocket nozzle, came back to me because my mom and dad had moved to Myrtle Beach. This would have been in the late 80s. And they had decided, like I'm doing now, trying to figure out where all my stuff should go, right?
Sure.
And so they had saved a lot of our toys and everything when we were kids. And so Mom packed up all of that stuff, the kids' stuff that they had, and mailed it to us. And my dad had passed by a few years. He died in 89. And I was out in the garage, and the garage had gotten water in it because of a little flood that we had. And I looked at all those boxes, and I just noticed one of them had my dad's handwriting. It was the only one that had my dad's handwriting on it. It just said Sonny on it. And I opened it up, and inside that box was the only rocket nozzle left from those days, and that National Science Fair medal.
Oh.
I'd forgotten about them. And I had them when I wrote a short article for Smithsonian Air and Space magazine about when I was a kid growing up in West Virginia building rockets. And that's when my phone almost melted down from New York publishers and Hollywood calling. They wanted to make a movie about it. They wanted me to write a book about it. You're going to write a book about this? And I said, well, I am now. But that National Science Fair medal, I trained the first Japanese astronauts, and astronaut Doi, agreed to take that Science Fair medal into orbit with him. So it's now been into space.
Oh, that's amazing.
So the Big Creek Missile Agency did finally make it into space.
So did your dad keep it because he was proud of it?
Apparently.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything.
Did he ever tell you, like, hey, you did a pretty good job?
No.
Never did? Really?
The only time I got any praise out of my dad was, and it's not like, you got to realize these guys, these World War II guys, these Depression guys, they just didn't go around hugging you and telling you how much they love. Mostly they just challenge you to do better. I was always saying, well, I did my best. And the answer always came back, well, do better. Right. Yeah. So when I wrote my first book, Torpedo Junction, my dad was an avid reader. He was a member of any number of book clubs and so on. And, so he read Torpedo Junction. Now, he didn't tell me directly, but he told my mom that he thought it was well written. And my mom told me that my dad said that book that I had written, that the book was well written. I took that as high praise from Homer Hickam Sr., I can tell you. And that meant this was really good, Sonny, and I love you. I took that. That's what it really meant.
Well, he kept your medal. I mean, there's ways that different people show love in different ways. And I think actually, there's a good mix of nature versus nurture. And, who knows if he'd have been super affectionate and loving, who knows where you would you still be where you're at right now? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Exactly. I think that, and I think that was true of all the fathers up and down the road there. They were not huggers. They didn't go around telling you that they loved you or anything like that. That was probably scared us.
Yeah.
That was Mom's job. Mom hugged you, and Mom said she loved you, but not that big coal miner dad.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you told me you just went to Myrtle Beach and that's about it, because to give someone a visual example of life in Coalwood, literally, like, you have this little strip of blue that you can see through the hills. Like, it's walls of, like, when you say holler, That's Coalwood.
Yeah, and that's why we didn't make the movie there, because there's no light, right?
Sure, yeah.
You don't have any light. You have light from 10 to 2, but approximately, and then you're going to get a shadow even on the clearest day that you can possibly have.
Oh, yeah.
But luckily with Sputnik, which really started me thinking about a career in the space business. The way it arrived was it split that valley, so we saw it for quite a long time.
Oh, that's amazing!
And the skies back then were, of course, just crystal clear. So yeah, in November or October, we just got a beautiful view. The October sky, it's just a beautiful view.
That is so crazy that's an anagram. I'm so glad you told me that. It blew my mind. But so do you remember the feeling you had when Sputnik went across?
Yeah, I was. I mean, God himself had gone across at that moment in a golden chariot. I would not have been more impressed. I'd never seen anything like that before, or imagined that I ever would. Something in space. I was a big reader of science fiction back then, like a lot of us were. That was kind of the golden age of sci-fi. It was Heinlein and Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke, and all those writers were really just churning out some great science fiction back then. So I was a big reader. And the idea of it, I didn't expect to live during a time when there would be satellites in space. I mean, people in space. No, that was just impossible. Maybe 1,000 years from now, or maybe if it ever happened at all. But actually, there in Coalwood, look up. 14 years old, look up again. After reading a lot of sci-fi and seeing something really, really, really in space crossing over Coalwood, it just, for some reason, just absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, there's no doubt. Well, I relate to that in a way of like with AI now. There's certain things that happen in your life where you're like, I never thought I would have saw that. So I could see how that would be a moment where...
Well, I never thought I'd see a rocket come back and land on the pad where it took off either, you know.
Nuts.
I never thought I would see that, ever. So Elon's done a great job there.
So crazy. Yeah, SpaceX, they have the rocket that takes off and then will land exactly where it's nuts.
NASA would have never been able to do that. That took somebody willing to risk their fame and fortune and burn out a lot of engineers and take real risk that NASA would have never taken.
He blew up a lot of rockets too doing it.
Yeah, and that's one way that's the way we did. Right?
Yeah,
we learned through trial and error by blowing them up.
Exactly. Yours just took out a fence. His took out like, I don't know, $50 million. I don't know how much those are to produce, but even still, the risk there, which. You know, we got so much to get into, but so you head to Virginia Tech, you know, boy from the holler.
So why didn't I go to WVU? Often comes up. So.
I mean, I was going to bring it up, but I didn't want to disrespect you because I'm a huge WVU fan.
So I was too. It's the era of Jerry West. You got to realize.
Oh yeah,
during that time frame. So
NBA logo.
We knew all of that, and my brother actually had signed to go to WVU. He'd gotten a number of football scholarship offers, but the coach that signed him, and I'm going to forget his name. I know that his nickname was Pappy something, had signed him to go to WVU, decided to retire. And so that irritated my brother enough that he decided to go to Virginia Tech instead. So my brother was already at Virginia Tech, but so I wanted to go to engineering school. I could have gone to WVU, but it was like 2 days to get to Morgantown back then. You had to overnight about Elkins. The way the roads were, there weren't any interstates or any way really to get up there. So my mom wanted me to be closer. So she's the one that actually applied to Virginia Tech. I didn't do it. She did. To get me in. I wasn't sure. I was so busy with my rockets and the science fairs, I didn't even think about applying anywhere. I figured I'd get in somewhere. And so she applied to Virginia Tech and then told me that that's where I was going to go. Now, I did not realize that it was a military college. My brother, as a football player, didn't have to be in that, and he never talked to me anyway, so I didn't know anything was going on down there. It was all brand new for me, but next thing I knew, I was marching around doing square corners and getting yelled at as well. But
it's not a military school anymore. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was a military college back then. There were around 5,000 students. There were 3,500 were in the military. Then they had veterans or football players, athletes did not have to be in the Corps, and about 150 women were there at that time. Totally different school.
Wow.
now. Yeah, the Cadet Corps. And so I lived in that military regiment for those years. And I'm the one that built their cannon that they have, the skipper.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was very much a Rocket Boy story, and I'll condense it for you. But basically, we played VMI every Thanksgiving, and they had a little cannon, and they would chant their Cadet Corps would chant to ours, "Where's your cannon? Where's your cannon?" That irritated me and a couple of other guys there. So against the administration didn't want us to do this, we sneaked around and actually built this huge brass cannon. Using donations where we could find brass. And my dad actually ended up contributed a couple of 100 pounds of Olga Coal Company brass, scrap brass to us. So we got all that. And the foundry in Roanoke the owner was an alum, a Virginia Tech alum. He cast it for us. And then we went up to the Lawton Reformatory that built Civil War carriages for all the battlegrounds and got one of their spares. They gave it to us, and we talked about it. So we built this giant cannon, and on Thanksgiving Day, 1963, VMI wheeled out their little cannon and fired it and went, "Where's your cannon? Where's your cannon?" And we dragged out the cannon we called Skipper. And I double loaded it to make sure it was real loud. Fired that thing, and a shockwave went across the football field and cracked the glass on the other side. And when my ears stopped ringing, I heard the chant from the Corps behind us, "Here's our cannon, here's our cannon." And that's become now an icon at Virginia Tech. They've retired it now. They have Skipper 2, which is a professionally made cannon. But our cannon, the Skipper, is now in the Cadet Corps Museum. They keep it polished to a gleam. It'll knock your eye out when you walk in. They've got it up on a pedestal. They have lights that shine down on it, and it's like a religious icon. And all the cadets know the story that Cadet Homer Hickam and 3 other boys, they all know their names, Butch Harper, George Fox, and Stu Corrett, built this cannon and in 1963. And so they all have to recite that back to any upperclassman who asks them that story.
That's incredible.
So it's a story very much like Rocket Boys, is why I never really, I didn't make it into a story itself. But my most recent book is a memoir called Don't Blow Yourself Up. It takes me through the Virginia Tech. It's good advice, by the way.
Sure,
everybody.
yeah.
So you should buy it just for the title. Look at it every day. Don't blow yourself up. There's a lot of ways you can blow yourself up, right? You don't have to do it physically. You can do it mentally too. So, in this last memoir is like it's a true sequel to Rocket Boys. It's like the next 40 years, includes the Vietnam era and everything else that happened after that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How long after Virginia Tech was it that you went to Vietnam? So
when I went through Air Force ROTC in Virginia Tech, but I had bad eyes. So at the end of the 4 years, even though it was military college and all of that, I did not get a commission because they said, well, we don't need non-pilots right now, but we'll call you back later. But as soon as I stepped foot outside that Virginia Tech campus, I heard from the draft board in McDowell County. And so it's like, okay, I either am going to go in.
So you got drafted.
I was about to get drafted.
Gotcha.
But I went to the Army recruiter instead and said, what can I do? I want to get a commission. I just went through the Virginia Tech, for goodness sakes. And then the Air Force would give me one. You know, they will give me one later. And they said, well, we had this program called a college op program, but you have to go, it takes 10 months to get your commission. And so I became a private E1, went off to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri in January 66. So I'd worked a little bit in between. And 10 months later, I got my brass bar as a second lieutenant in the Army. Was sent off to Dugway Proving Ground, Utah. And then I could have stayed there, but I ended up volunteering for Vietnam. It was very few people that did, I guess. It was kind of looking back on it, kind of a foolish thing to do. But I had been well trained. I'd had the 4 years at Virginia Tech in the military situation. I had been trained at Fort Belvoir as a combat engineer. I just felt like if I don't go some Porsche slub, they're going to send Porsche slub who's not as well trained as I am. Anyway, I'm a McDowell County, West Virginia boy. That's what we do, right?
Lord, yeah.
Yeah, so I volunteered, ended up in the 4th Infantry Division. in 67, 68. So I was over there for TET 68. I got to see that real up close and personal, and the Battle of Docto too, and all of that.
Wow.
So it was an interesting year, needless to say. So.
How did that affect your life after that? I imagine your perception on the world just instantly is different.
Well, it was in a way, of course, being in a combat situation. What I did over in Vietnam was I just became my dad. You don't want to be around me when I become my dad. I'm capable of being my dad. Mm-hmm. So I just became him, and his capability of leading men and making them want to follow him. I just remembered what he did. And how once he made a decision, by golly, he stuck to it. They realized that if Lieutenant Hickam says something, he means it. And so I just really followed the leadership qualities of my dad over there and got through it. But when I came back, I was changed because of that, really. And I just wanted something. I wasn't quite sure what it was that I wanted. I wanted something else. I came back. I stayed in the Army for 6 years. I got out as a captain. And then what am I going to do with my life? I had an engineering degree. Obviously, that's what I'm going to do, right? So I ended up working as a Department of Army civilian for the Army Missile Command there in Huntsville. They sent me to Huntsville, Redstone Arsenal after Vietnam. But they also sent me to Puerto Rico for a year. And there I learned to scuba dive.
Oh, wow.
And then I became a scuba instructor. So all of that just started putting itself together. And I missed writing. I wanted to write. I had written for the college newspaper at Virginia Tech. And that was something that I just really missed. So I started freelance writing for scuba diving magazines, and that's how I cut my teeth. So while I was being an engineer, I was also being a writer. So I was very lucky to be able to do two things that I really loved at the same time.
Sure. Last question on Vietnam: did it kind of change your perception on war?
Yes, I hate war. All wars are stupid. And I don't care. I don't care what. I get it. I get it when Pearl Harbor happened and all that. But we had to go defend ourselves. Maybe that was a unique situation. But as soon as I got over to Vietnam, I knew the best thing I could do is keep us all alive as best I could do, and just get us through it. I just didn't see that it was worth it. What was happening, and you started to feel. If you had any perception at all of what was going on, and I'm a big reader, and I read every book my dad would read just to kind of get to know him, and so I read a lot of history, and so being over there and seeing what the Vietnamese people were going through, what we were actually causing them to suffer while we were trying to save them at the same time, right? It's the old thing, we had to destroy the village in order to save it, that came out of Vietnam. Wasn't long before I could see that we were not going to win this thing, and we were just losing really good men. We lost a lot of really good men over there that our country could have used, I think, later on. And so we really messed up my whole generation in that Vietnam War thing.
Yeah, and pretty much every military member I've talked to hates war, and I think in general, people can, we love the military, we hate the war. We need to be protected, but at the same time, war is hell, literally. So.
Yeah, and it just, again, there are so many. I did not consider myself an innocent. Okay, I had been trained. I was well trained, but Fourth Infantry Division was primarily a draftee division. Mm-hmm. So what we were seeing, even in 67, 68, were the kids that they were sending to us were barely trained, and they were not top students. At that time, if you went to college, you didn't have to go in the military. So who were they drafting? They were drafting people that just didn't have any advantages at all. And so
poor people,
exactly. Yep. So they were coming over, and you just had to bring them up to speed in a big hurry. And again, it's like they didn't know anything about why they were there or anything else. But they were good soldiers, don't get me wrong. The first thing I saw was the Battle of Docto, and these draftee 4th Infantry Division guys went right up that hill. And they took it. great losses, but they took it. They were good soldiers.
Wow.
Well, they're Americans,
Yeah, man.
Don't mess with the Americans, really.
Yeah.
We can only be pushed so far, and then you'll be sorry.
We tend to forget that, we can handle our own. We tend to forget that, although I wish it would never have to happen across the world. I mean, so many times we go in trying to save somewhere or saying that we're saving a community, and then there we are for 10 years. Yeah. Losing people.
But, West Virginians do that. People from Appalachia in general do that. We tend to join up and we tend to fight for our country really hard. And then we come back and we're underappreciated, in my opinion, after that. But we're willing to do it. And our kids are going to do it too. That's just what we do.
Another thing I love about West Virginia is, don't you talk about us. We can fight amongst each other, but don't you come and fight us.
Precisely. It's just like family, right? You may fight with your brother, but don't you mess with my brother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. So you become a scuba instructor, and then you become a freelance writer. You start writing about scuba diving. How did you getting on the council with NASA? How did NASA come into the picture? Exactly?
Okay, so actually, what happened with NASA? I always wanted to work for NASA. Obviously, I was a rocket boy, right?
Right.
But when I came back from Vietnam, so that was like right after Apollo, and so they canceled Apollo, our moon flights. And they started laying off engineers. So they weren't hiring engineers. The Army was. And so it was natural, since I just spent 6 years in the Army. I've been stationed at Redstone Arsenal. I knew Huntsville, Alabama very well. I liked the town. And they had the Army Missile Command there. And that kind of was sort of, like rockets and stuff, even though I had not worked with them at all. I was in, in the Army. I was in the Ordnance Corps, principally working with tanks and artillery and that kind of thing. So, but it's like, oh boy, I get to work with at least missiles in a way. And I did end up working on the TOW, which is a anti-tank missile. But so I started working as a Department of Army civilian for the Missile Command there in Huntsville. And I could see that I was only going to go so far there because I was coming in rather late. The best thing to do for any company or federal agency is come in right out of college. So there I had gone 6 years past college, and now I'm coming in as a little bit older, even though I'm only in my late 20s by then. I'm a little bit older than everybody else, and everybody younger was kind of ahead of me. And I could see, okay, I'll progress, but I won't be able to go as high as I'd like to go. So I asked for a transfer. And I was also researching at that time Torpedo Junction, and I was very interested in German U-boats and so on. So I took a job in Germany, long story short, for the 7th Army Training Command.
Of course you did.
Yes. And so I went over there, and I loved it. I had a great time over in Germany. But in the process of that, I picked up on a computer. I had learned Fortran. It's like the last class I took at Virginia Tech was Fortran, which is a computer language that nobody uses anymore. But at that time, it was cutting edge. And so I was working for the 7th Army Training Command, who wanted to automate all their the luminous documents that they had. And I said, I raised my hand. I was doing something entirely different, but I raised my hand and said, I know Fortran. I know a little bit about computers. Let me figure out how to do this. Give me that job. And they did. So I computerized the 7th Army Training Command. And again, we're talking 1979. This is a long time ago. And I used the computers. It was called a Wang computer at that time. It's made in New Hampshire, I think. Just cutting edge stuff. And that's why NASA hired me, not for rockets, not for anything, but the fact that I knew how to automate documents.
Wow.
And so they hired me, the Space Lab. So when the shuttle started flying in 81, that's when I was hired by NASA. And they had something called Space Lab.
Right.
And Space Lab was a kind of precursor to Space Station. And it had a computer system in it. And but it also, they needed to track all these materials to put this thing together, to assemble it. Right. And so they hired me to come in. I automated Space Lab. It only took me about 6 months. It was easy to do. And so I saw that they were now going to start flying Space Lab. Right. and they needed somebody to train the crew. And by then, because I'd gone through all the computer systems, I knew Space Lab backwards and forwards, and they opened up a branch there at Marshall Space Flight Center to train the astronauts. And I was a scuba instructor, and I said, "Hey, I can do this too. Let me go into this training branch. I want to work with the astronauts." And so I shifted over there and spent the rest of my career as a training manager of astronauts. Is what I did.
Wow. We have a visitor.
Yeah.
Visitor in the studio.
Yeah,
Noodle has joined us.
Noodle. Hey, Noodle.
Yeah, this is Noodle.
Well, I'm a cat person too, as you well know.
Yep. That's incredible. So have you ever felt like in these situations like, oh, he's from West Virginia, or have people just generally accepted you into the culture that you arrive in? Like you arrive in NASA, which I'm sure has there been West Virginians to be in that position before?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I figured. But,
so Werner von Braun's right-hand man was a fellow by the name of Ed Buckby, who grew up in West Virginia.
Wow.
He went to WVU.
Really?
And so Ed wasn't an engineer. He was, I say his right-hand man. He was the public relations man for Werner von Braun. And so when von Braun got it in his head to build Space Camp and the Space and Rocket Center there in Huntsville, he tapped Ed Buckby. So Ed Buckby, fellow West Virginian, was the first director of the United States Space and Rocket Center / Space Camp, the famous Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama.
Wow.
So I got to know Ed. So he liked me because I was from West Virginia, of course, and I was a scuba instructor and worked out at NASA. And so when Challenger went down, I knew most of the crew members of the Challenger.
Mm-hmm.
I was over in Japan at that time training the Japanese. And so we had to kind of stand down for a while because and that's the only time I really worked on rockets was it was the solid rocket booster that blew up that killed the astronauts. And so I volunteered again to work on the solid rocket motor redesign. I said, yes, I know about solid rockets. And so I got involved with the redesign of that thing. I couldn't believe how it was a horrible design. And I said, Quentin would have never allowed the Big Creek Missile Agency to build a rocket like this. It was so dumb, and no wonder it killed the crew. And so I worked with the folks there, and we redesigned. It's never failed since. It's worked ever since. But that was a brief time, and so I didn't have any astronauts to train, so I did have some time on my hands. So I went over I got the idea. I heard that Ed was going to build a swimming pool for Space Camp, where they could teach neutral buoyancy. That's where you use water, the buoyancy of water, to simulate gravity, the lack of microgravity. And so we put somebody in a suit, an astronaut in a suit, or me in a suit, whoever it was, underwater, and you could simulate microgravity because using the buoyancy of water. So I convinced Ed to let me build a small version of the neutral buoyancy simulator at Space Camp, and it's still there. It's called the Underwater Astronaut Trainer.
Wow. I
went out and raised the money for it. I found out who built the big tank, and it was Chicago Bridge and Iron. I went to them and said, how much would it cost to build it? And they said, and I got to know them pretty well up there, just trying to figure it out. And after a while, they volunteered. They did it for free. So we built the UAT for free. And I ended up, I had a little team of dive masters, and we trained space campers in there till I got real busy again, headed back over to Japan. So yes, there's been lots of West Virginians around. Now at Marshall Space Flight Center, you're more likely to run into an engineer from MIT, Georgia Tech, or Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
Than from Virginia Tech, which was kind of good for me. It's mostly Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi, Georgia. That Southeastern Conference bunch of engineers there. It was really, really good to be from Virginia Tech. I could always say when they say, "Who you rooting for, Alabama or Auburn?" I go, "I'm rooting for the Hokies." So I get off the hook that way. And they're going, "Who's that?"
Yeah, that's so cool. And you brought up Werner von Braun again, so I did want to ask you. So we didn't realize that Operation Paperclip was a thing when we were, back then, and he'd done a lot. He revolutionized rocketry and done a lot of things to further the science. Is there a certain point in time that you learned that he was also in the Nazi Party?
Yeah, I learned that when I was in Colwood.
Really?
Yeah. Remember Mr. Bukowski? Remember in the movie He's Killed?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, he's a real person, and he's actually a Russian Jew. And and my dad would tell me where Werner von Braun, and that would be one of the ways he would say, why is he your hero? Because he's a German. He came out of the World War II, and you could say he was a Nazi or not. It's argumentative, but nonetheless, in Huntsville, the von Braun team is still very much heroic, and they were. And so, there is a time, I think that a person can atone. Werner von Braun didn't go around sticking people in gas chambers or anything like that. He was just a person who supported the government who did that kind of thing. And I don't think he really knew that was happening, frankly. But nonetheless, we needed them. It was the Cold War. The Russians had captured Peenemünde, which was where the V2A4 was built. Mm-hmm. So they had all of this manufacturing capability. We didn't have that. All we had were some captured V2s, and Werner von Braun and his team, they gave up. They were smart and ran westward to be captured by the U.S. Army rather than the Russians. So they were sitting over there in Germany. It was clear that the Russians had all that capability, and they were starting to develop it. And it's like, what are we going to do? We don't have that capability, so let's bring the Germans over. And the idea was just to bring them over temporarily, teach us how to manufacture these engines, tell us how they work. Let's fire a few of them down at White Sands. And so they came over, and they didn't really offer them citizenship at first. But, when you start working with somebody, and they're just normal people with a German accent, you kind of get to like them, I guess, is what happened. But what really happened was that Redstone Arsenal, sitting up there in Huntsville, Alabama, was a bullet factory during World War II, and now they didn't need any bullets, and this great big base was sitting there empty, and Senator Sparkman from Alabama had a humongous amount of power in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And so what he did was he asked for the von Braun team to come to Redstone Arsenal. Mm-hmm. In order for them to do that and form what became the Army Ballistic Missile Agency, in order to do that, they needed to become citizens. So they did. And they came to Huntsville at that time, probably had maybe 20,000 people that lived there. It was known as the watercress capital of the world. They grew cotton all around there. It was just a cotton town, really. They came in there and just changed everything. They formed a symphony. They built a library. They started building these Redstone rockets, which were just stretched out V2s, really. Right. And they just revolutionized the Huntsville and also the whole rocket building business in the United States.
Yeah, basically the German scientists were split up between the U.S. and Russia at the time.
Yeah, but we got the best ones.
Gotcha.
But they got the manufacturing and more engines than we had. And of course, Russians are pretty smart. They figured out how to disassemble them, put them back together again pretty quick. And so so von Braun came in, and he was one of these people that was just simply a great leader, and had a lot of personality about him. And everybody, even the Americans, just respected him and liked him so much they wanted to work really hard for him. Yeah. So they did that. And so again, the Germans came in, they raised their families there, and a lot of them are still there, and they just became just regular American kids. Most of the Germans wouldn't even allow the kids to speak German, and even though their parents did, just become regular American kids. And that's what's happened over the years. And so the Germans that came over with the Peenemünde team with Paperclip are looked at fondly by the people in Colwood because they knew them. And I never met von Braun. I know his daughter pretty well, Marguerite. She's a professor at the retired University of Idaho.
Wow.
actually. I've met most of the kids that are still living there. And they have various professions. Most of them did not become engineers. They became teachers or businessmen or whatever. And we have our big civic center. It's called the Von Braun Civic Center there. And he started Space Camp and Space and Rocket Center and all that. So, so he's, as far as we are concerned, he atoned for what he did. And,
well, there was a lot of Germans. I mean, there's stories of them trying to overthrow the government, and then they were put to death. A certain sect of Germans.
I became a pretty good friend. Of course, he was a lot older than me, but Ernst Stuhlinger, who was he was one of the leading German engineers, and his family. And Ernst was actually a survivor of Stalingrad. So the Battle of Stalingrad, which is a horrible thing. And so he was one of the last people out, and he managed to get somehow to Peenemünde. And you can imagine you're willing to do anything to not be sent back to the Eastern Front. Okay.
Right.
So Peenemünde was where they learned how to build the V2s or the A4 as they called it. And, so they were kind of separated from the rest of the war effort. They were protected, really. Again, I'm not making excuses for anybody. I don't know what von Braun did. I've seen it said that he knew that they were using slave labor to build the V2s. I don't think he was directly involved, but the very fact that he knew it, that should condemn him. But nonetheless, when he came to the United States, I know he was a good citizen. I know he was a good father. Marguerite just loved him so much. And the people of Huntsville thought that the Germans that came in were just really good people. They liked them. They liked the families, and they liked everything about them. So whether you can atone for something, and again, we still don't know exactly what happened. Probably never will know for sure. Yeah,
I'm not a historian. I mean, there's a lot of, like when Operation Paperclip come out, nobody really knew about the scientists being split up, across the world, and that made it public. And
of course, I'd seen von Braun on TV. So Colwood, in about 1954, started getting television. And of course, there was no antenna high enough on a house to be able to pick up anybody.
Sure.
So what the coal company did was build an antenna up on a mountain and cable. We had one of the first cable TV systems in the world.
Oh, wow.
Was in coal.
No way.
So they were bringing it in by cable. And so about then, that's when Disney started having Disney World. And he had Werner von Braun on. That's how we got to know before Sputnik. I knew who Werner von Braun sort of was. I just knew he was really, really smart guy.
So he was on television pretty regularly.
He was on television, on the Disney. So Walt Disney, for whatever reason, decided, well, in first place, if you have a German accent, you kind of sound smart anyway, right? And so Disney had Future World. What was it? Frontier World, Future World. I forget what the other worlds were. Fantasy World. And so Future World was rockets and going into space and that kind of thing. And who better to talk about that than this rather handsome German rocket scientist named, wonderfully, Werner von Braun.
Yeah.
So
did you really meet him when he was a kid?
No, I never.
Okay, that was made up.
So in the movie, so Joe Johnson, the director, said, "Homer, I'm going to finally let you meet Werner von Braun." And so the special effects guy, his name was Joey DiGiotano. Joe thought he looked like a young Werner von Braun. He kind of did, had that square chin and all that kind of thing. So he dusted his hair with white powder to have him have white hair. And so at the end of the National Science Fair scene, he had Joey come and shake Jake Gyllenhaal's hand and say, good job. And did you see who that was? No, who was that? It was Werner von Braun. That didn't happen.
What was that for you watching that?
It could have.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So wrapping up here, I do want to ask you a little bit about the production of the movie. So Jake Gyllenhaal's first break was this movie, correct?
Yeah. Yes, and Joe Johnston picked him. As soon as he came in to audition, Joe knew that he wanted Jake. he couldn't pronounce his name. I remember him trying to tell me over the phone. He said, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Gylan, Hole or something. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. But anyway, he's going to be really, really good. His family was old Hollywood. His mom was a screenplay writer, still is, and his dad is a director out there. So he grew up in Hollywood. Actually.
His sister's an actress.
Yeah, Maggie. Yep. I've never met Maggie, but his parents, I know Naomi, his mom, I know really well. And Jake too. I got to know Jake really well on set. He's a sweet boy, and I'm so glad he's had a successful career.
Did you follow his career after that?
Like, I always want to watch a Jake movie.
Have you watched Donnie Darko?
I have. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that came right after. That was after October Sky. His dad was against him. He said, "Look, you've got a good established career with people. Your performance in October Sky was so good. People will want you for some big movies. Not this quirky little Donnie Darko. Nobody will care anything about this. Is stupid. It's this dumb rabbit that you're talking to. It's the dumbest thing I ever heard, and that turned out to be this great hit.
I like to think that's the sequel. It's like, whoa, Homer really took a turn there.
That's right. Yeah. I wouldn't mind hanging out with a giant rabbit. I mean, have something to tell you,
Yeah. Yeah. And they're just completely different movies, but both are amazing. But so were you around, like, did you go to the production regularly or did you?
So they filmed it up around Oak Ridge, which is about a 3-hour drive from Huntsville. And they said, well, you can come anytime you want to. We'd love for you to come. And that's very rare that they want a writer to come and not only a writer that they're basing the movie on the book, but also actually the person that it's about, right? They were very, very nice to let me come up and do that. And so, I would drive up every so often and watch it. And we didn't really know whether it was going to be any good or not at that time. Joe Johnson, we knew, was a very good director, and we were lucky to get Chris Cooper in as my dad and Laura Dern as Miss Riley and Natalie Kennedy as my mom. And my mom actually visited the set. It was kind of interesting. So Chris Cooper is a bit of a method actor, and he asked, would I bring something of my dad's for him to wear? And of course, I'd showed him pictures of the khakis that my dad tended to wear. And, but I gave him Dad's Masonic ring to wear, and the wristwatch that he wore into mine, an old beat up thing, and his lucky silver dollar that he always carried.
Wow.
So my mom came and met Chris. It was the only time I ever saw my mom speechless. Because she spotted that Masonic ring first off, and then the watch, and then when Chris brought out the silver dollar, she just she just couldn't believe it. She wasn't particularly impressed by any of the other actors. I mean, my mom had lost all filters by then anyway. And I remember I introduced her to Natalie Kennedy, who was playing her, and she said, well, I was hoping Kathy Bates would get the part, but I guess you'll do. That was my mom.
No, she did.
But Natalie was so sweet.
That's great.
Yeah, my mom could be a pill. Quick story: we were all in Coalwood. Governor Underwood, remember Governor Underwood?
Yep.
So Governor Underwood was there, and this is after the movie and book and everything came out. And we were all in Coalwood, and we were all going around praising Coalwood about how wonderful it was to grow up here. We were having the October Sky Festival and all that. Mm-hmm. And Governor Underwood made a mistake of handing the mic to my mom. Well, Mrs. Hickam, what do you think about all this? She just looked around and said, I hate this place. I have always hated this place, and now that I'm back, I remember why. Thanks, Mom. Thanks for that.
That's
Thanks
amazing.
For your words. Thank you. She didn't mean a word of that, folks. Yeah.
Yeah. Which we'll get into that real quick. So eventually you had festivals, which doesn't happen anymore currently, correct?
That is
Y'all
correct.
quit.
I called it off 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know if you know Scott Hill, who was having the Rocket Boys. We had 12 years, and not we. The Coalwood people put it on for 12 years. Finally, the people that put it on were in their 70s and 80s, and they were done with it. And I was pretty well done with it too. But Scott Hill up here, representing the city of Beckley, decided that they wanted to have what we called the Rocket Boys Festival here. So we did that for a number of years. I finally thought, well, we've done enough. We've done it enough, and so and I. Tired of driving up here every October. It's either going to be snowing or or too hot or something, anyway,
Sure.
I make excuses, but actually, I'm going up Friday to Pipestem, where Scott Hill is now the, I guess public relations up there. He's convinced me and my agent, Burke Allen, to come up, and actually I'm meeting Roy Lee Cook, one of the original Rocket Boys there, who divides his time between Fairmont and Columbia, South Carolina. And so we're just going to, okay, all right, we're going to do it again. People are going to come in and we're going to fire some rockets off, and I'll be the rocket boy. If I have to be the rocket boy, I'll be the rocket boy. There you
That's
go.
Great. That's great. And shout out to Burke for making this interview happen. But so what would you like to say? I guess, when's the last time you've been to Coalwood? What would you like to say to people in McDowell County? Because unfortunately, McDowell County gets a lot of negativity from outsiders. And me being from there, I just constantly remind the kids there that are growing up there that, listen, you're not held by your expectations of outsiders. You can have the same opportunities as everyone else. And that's kind of how I live my life.
Well, what I like to tell not only the kids from McDowell County, but all the whole coalfields area, the whole Appalachian area, really, is that you have advantages that you don't even know, and that is you come from a real place. It is a real place, real people that have real values, and you're going to be surprised when you go out. You can work with people who have the fanciest college degrees in the world, but they don't have the values that you have. You have seen people that have survived through the worst and are still going. They have the perseverance that it takes to succeed. And you will carry those values with you that you don't even realize that you have right now. And it is one of persistence. I mean, the people of Appalachia are persistent people. And if we have a goal, we tend to go work hard and make that goal happen. I would say, I wrote a book called We Are Not Afraid after 9/11. I was asked by Health Communications, Inc., that wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, would I write a book that would kind of buck up the American people? I said, well, let me just write a book about where I grew up and the people that raised me, and tell you their values, because I never saw any of them afraid. When you stop to think about it, they should have been in fear their whole lives, because every day the men went off to work in a deep, dark, dirty coal mine. And they lived in a company house. And if the coal miner was killed or injured, they had to leave. And where would they go? So you would think that they would have been afraid, but they weren't.
Yeah.
They were strong people. Why? They were proud of who they were. They liked the fact that they were mining coal that made steel, that made this country strong. They liked that fact. They were proud of who they were. They stood up for what they believed, whatever it was. So I was always told growing up, stand up for what you believe, but do it in a respectful way. Don't go out and just yell at people, hold signs and march around and act like a fool, but actually figure out why you believe what you do and be able to explain it to other people and try to convince them to see it the same way. If they don't, they don't. Okay. So we're proud of who we are. We stand up for what we believe. I was taught to keep our family together. And the people in Coalwood did that. They kept their family together no matter what. And also trust in God, but rely on yourself.
Yeah.
So that's the values of the people of Appalachia, the values of the people of McDowell County. And you carry that with you, whether you know it or not.
Heck
wherever you go.
I love it. And you've wrote, how many books have you wrote?
19 so far.
Man, that's awesome. It's
a good profession. I love it. And I'm also now a publisher. So I decided that, I still love writing, but I would like to bring on some new writers. And I went up to West Virginia Writers Association with the idea of trying to find some writers in the Appalachian area that maybe wouldn't be found otherwise, and see if I can help them get published and under Homer Hickam Books, which is under Headline Books, which is a major independent. So So yeah, I'm starting to do that. I got 2 books going on right now that I'm going to be bringing out. So that's good. That's another something for me to do.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. When is the next is the fest? Y'all going to plan a festival for next year?
No.
No.
Well,
Gotcha.
I won't, but who knows what Burke and Scott Hill will come up
Got
with.
it. Okay. You're just like, whatever.
But I love coming back. Believe me, I love coming back here.
Yeah,
It's great. I mean, this is home. No question about it. And a lot of people don't know it. They think when they think of Huntsville, they're thinking of Montgomery or Mobile or something. Huntsville's in the mountains. We're in the last little bit of the Appalachian chain. I live on the side of Weatherly Mountain, one of the last mountains in Appalachia. So, so it's still part of Appalachia in its own way. It's a high-tech version, if you will.
Awesome. Well, we'll take it. Well, I appreciate your time, sir. And obviously, you know,
bet, JD.
thank you so
My
much
pleasure.
for shining a positive light on this area, because you go across the country and people know who Homer Hickam is. And I'm proud to say that I'm from the same county. So
That's wonderful. Thank you, JD.
Yeah, man. Everyone else out there, before you leave, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Creepalachia if you haven't. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, take a minute and leave a review. That'll really help the show be found. And we are on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and we do have merch now on creepalachia.shop. And he said all that good stuff about McDowell and country folk while petting my cat Noodle. So thank you, sir.
Love Noodle.
Yeah.
I'm going to take him with me.
Yep, we love Noodle. And everyone else, always remember, above all else, long live Appalachia.